What's up, y'all? I didn't realize I was live just now. So yeah, what we're talking about today is actually adding melody, okay? So it's basically adding melody to chords that you may already have, okay? So that's pretty much what it is. So let's just say that you figured out some chords, but you're wanting to understand what the melody is actually gonna do, or maybe you're just stuck at that particular position. Well, that's what we're going to talk about. Okay. And I mean, of course, we learn other songs. So as we learn songs already, let me come down. As we learn songs already, we can figure out based on the songs that we learn and what the singer sings, why do they come up with that particular melody, or why do they actually play with that? So let's use the key of A for this particular explanation. Now, I am going to use modal terminology. I'm going to use terminology of modes, and I'm mainly going to use Ionian, Lydian, Mixolydian, and maybe like Aeolian. Okay, so just keep that in mind. I'm going to use those. So those are the main modes that I'm going to use in terms of like terminology. Now, I normally use terminology like not the number system, like one, or from the one and go to the two, the four, then three, whatever. But the Ionian is the one, okay. The Lydian is the four, Mixolydian is the five, Aeolian is the six. All right. So it's going to be helpful as I'm actually explaining this particular thing from a standpoint of melody, because you don't put any melody over any chord. It doesn't work like that. Now, sometimes things, if you want to play with the contrast of certain melodies that goes over certain chords, and sometimes the wrong melody or the wrong scale doesn't work. Okay. Now, so let's start out with like I said, we're gonna be in A, and that's pretty much what we're gonna stay in. I'm not gonna deviate too much from that. So there's my A major. Maybe I should come up. All right, so since we're in A is in this case the Ionian, okay? Okay, so if A is our Ionian mode, or our first chord, then B is our minor chord. That's the two, which is in this case Dorian, but we're not going to talk about scales necessarily from that. 3, 4, 5, 5. So let's start over. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Back to 1. All right, so I oftentimes use the major scale to fit over every major chord in terms of how I've been describing it. But I've been describing it in a way based on whether somebody is like a beginner and using that as a reference, okay? It's purely using that as a reference. But the major scale is not the only scale that goes over a major chord. All right. So over a major chord, there are actually 3 modes that goes over a major chord. Okay. So if we're going to use this A major, in this case, it's the Ionian mode. All right. And I'm only doing this for demonstration purposes, this particular explanation. But a major scale goes over this chord. I'm going to demonstrate. There's the Ionian mode. Here is the Lydian mode. Here's Mixolydian. Okay. Every key has 3 major chords in it, and those are the 3 major scales, or the three modes that goes over those major chords. Okay, and there are also 3 minor chords as well. We'll talk about that a different time, because I don't want to go off into that rabbit trail. But anyway, so to go from this part, I've done enough of an introduction. So this being the Ionian position, and this actually being the Dorian position. I mainly want to focus on the D, G, and B strings as it relates to adding melody. Okay, I only want to focus on that. So we got this. So let's say that the chord progression is a 1-2 chord progression. And let's say as a beginner and or intermediate guitar player, you're trying to figure out what type of melody to go over this chord progression. But you know that you have that much so far. Okay, well, if I were to break this down into a triad format, instead of playing the full chords, or the full barred position chords, let's just focus on, like I said, the D, G, and B strings. Well, what we would be playing is this triad. I was actually playing a minor 7th before, but now I'm playing a straight minor. And let's actually stick with a minor 7th, which is, let's stick with that. All right, so now, okay, now we're doing this, triad thing between the 5th fret, the 7th fret on the D, G, and B string. And this is pretty much what we're playing. So if someone is writing the song, it's like, well, okay, well, what would we actually add? What can I add to that? I mean, it sounds repetitive. All right, so first, to start off, I could talk about, what the whole scale is for the 1 and what the whole scale is for the 2. Or in other words, what the whole scale is for, what the whole Ionian mode is and what the whole Dorian mode is. And that is useful. But what you can actually do, you can actually borrow from what the actual shapes are. Like, let the shapes help you, okay, in this particular case. So we know that we're playing this note. When we're playing the A major chord, we're playing this note. So we know that much, all right? And when we're playing the B minor 7th chord, we're playing these 3 notes. We know that much, all right? So since we know that, we can pretty much at least arpeggio, da, 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 and that can happen over the triads. But of course that sounds boring. So now I'm going to break out into what I already know, which is that major scale. But I don't necessarily want to go this way. I mean, I can go that way, but I know that I can play the 1 here, the 2 here, 3, 4, 5, but I can also play the 1 here and the 2 here. I can play it in that position as well. So that's a way that I can actually come up with the actual melody over that chord, okay? Or, and then this next note was already inside of the actual B minor chord. So, but this line, that works over the A major because I'm already borrowing some of the notes that's in that A major chord. So, and that goes over the B minor 7th chord. All right. And those of y'all who are peeping in, go on and drop a line. You know what I'm saying? Don't be strangers. Some of y'all like to peep in and stuff and peep back out. You ain't got to stay, but say something. But anyway, so yeah, that's just one way that you can actually add that. But there are so many possibilities with what to add over an A major chord in the Ionian position. Okay. And this actually also gives you opportunities to form different chords as well when you start to come up with other melodies that kind of go outside of the major chord. But just make sure that your timing falls onto the 2 chord as well. So if you're actually doing an A major going to a B minor 7th chord, make sure it's like on the because all of the notes that you're playing in that scale it's kind of giving away to you a little bit. So if all else fails and you can't come up with a line that can fit over those chords, at least arpeggiate. And that can sort of be your melody, okay? That could at least give it away to you. Now, next, because, okay, the next part is going to be this. Sometimes it is assumed that when we're playing a major chord, that it's the 1 chord, and a major chord is not always the 1, okay? So now we're in the key of A. If we were to count up to 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's the 4. That's also a major chord. Here's the 5. So the 4 is a D major. The 5 is an E major. So what the 1 and the 5 have in common is that if you were to move from the 1 to the 2, it goes from a major chord to a minor chord. And if you go from the 5 to the 6, you're going from a major chord to a minor chord as well. Okay, so both of those chord progression movements, they have something in common. So the 1 to 2 got something in common, and the 5 to the 6 has something in common. Okay, so again, they both move from a major chord to a minor chord. So basically, the same thing kind of applies in that particular position, in that particular situation, but you still have to know where you are in the song. So in this case, the 5, which is actually in the Mixolydian position, E major. In this situation, I would not play a E major scale, even though I can play that. In the 5 position, it will not work. It's actually, okay? So that is a Mixolydian mode that I played over that major chord. chord. And then here we go to the 6th, which is what, Aeolian? So the way that triad would look is actually like this. Then I have to ask myself, what kind of melody would I come up with in this particular scenario? Well, like I said, it is similar as going from the 1 to the 2. It's very similar, but you still have to know what comes after that Aeolian mode, and you have to know what what actually comes after the Aeolian, which is Locrian, then you're going back to Ionian. You just have to know that. You have to know that so that you can realize what intervals you're actually playing. So typically, if you're playing a major chord and you play the 5th degree within that major chord, which is right here, typically there's a whole step after that 5. Okay. So these are little tricks that you figure out once you really lock it in. Once you really see the patterns, they start to really stand out to you. This is something that I'm actually here to help with. Okay. Now, of course, on YouTube, I'm showing you the what. In my private community, I explain the why. Okay. But yeah, if we're in that mixolydian position, and actually in the description, I have an email address that any of you can contact me. If y'all want to be evaluated, if anyone wants to be evaluated, I do that for free. And it's been that way for a while, actually. I guess maybe I had my links in the wrong place, but if you just want to if you want to know what the next step is for you, like as a beginner guitar player or even an intermediate guitar player, and you just got questions, but you don't necessarily want to leave comments, you can email me directly. Okay. So just letting you know that. So if I were to play this E major chord in the mixolydian position, as long as I'm playing that mixolydian scale over that E major, I'm good. As long as I'm allowing for my melody to come from that mixolydian position, I'm good. But to keep it simple, so what I'm hearing is this. So I'm hearing dum dum boom boom boom. That's just what's kind of coming up in my head. So that's already in my E major. So that's there. So here we go. So that's already in there. And actually this note, which is a C sharp, is from the next chord, but it actually does work. Okay, so it's not inside of the E major chord, but it's in the key, and it does work. It kind of changes up the chord if I wanted to, form a different chord off that, like something like I don't know if y'all see what I'm doing. or just over the E major. So the melody ends up being, okay? And then the next time you can go, and then go back. Then you can get fancy after that, all right? So just keep that in mind. The reason I went here is because that is in the F sharp minor. It's right there. So, and after you figure out what you want to play, you can start getting fancy and do all the bends and stuff like that. So if I were to add a little reverb, so, you know, then you can add all that stuff. But figure out your melody first, okay? See what I'm saying? That's, you know, tons of melodies can work over that chord progression, but that works. And then over your 1 and your 2, it's the same kind of thing happening. And I forgot what I did on that one. I think it was real simple. So that one is so I don't know if you saw that, it did right there. Did a little double stop run. Okay, so the chords give away some of the notes that you could actually play. So the hard part is actually just figuring out what notes to play in between. But what helps with that are knowing your modes, okay? And knowing your modes actually starts out with knowing your major scale. If you know that major scale, you are not going to have a hard time with learning modes. So if any of you need help with that, I have a video that is about modes, and it explains that deeper. If any of you have questions about that now, you can sort of chime in and ask, but I'm not going to just do that right off, because I'm trying to keep my videos a little short unless there's a discussion taking place. All right. So, but yeah, remember, modes are extremely helpful. Don't run away from that. If you know that major scale, you actually already know your modes. You just may not understand how to actually piece it together, how to actually use it and stuff like that. But modes are very useful, and you may not even remember or recall what to call each thing. Like you may not know Ionian mode, which is the 1 essentially. You may not know the Dorian mode, but you know what 2 is. You know what that is, okay? And if we're in the key of A major, and I'm playing that 1, and you know when you go to the 2, and you're playing the B minor, and you know what goes over that is, well, that's a Dorian mode. The only thing is this: you can mix and match modes, you know. Now, don't confuse what I'm talking about in this particular context. What I'm talking about in this particular context, yes, a certain melody does belong to certain chords, you know, depending on where you are and figuring that out. But anytime you want to do things like you want a solo, or maybe you're doing fusion or something like some jazz fusion and stuff like that, it's time to mix and match all types of stuff, okay? But if you want to start a song off and you want to kind of make sure that the plane leaves the runway first, and then you ascend up, and you just want to make sure there's like a progression in what you're playing. It's actually cool to kind of sneak a couple of different modes into a chord that it doesn't belong to, and it offers some real nice contrast. So if I started out and everything that I'm playing over this major chord is straight up major, that's going to be the typical assumed thing, okay? And the way that would sound is, but even though this doesn't work, if somebody wanted to, they could do the whole major thing. But what if they snuck a Dorian mode over a major chord? And went back. And maybe, you know, if they just want to add some fill in there, or maybe the chord does switch to a minor chord in that place, you know? So if you're playing that A major and you switch to a, well, what minor mode, so to speak, would you play over that minor? Okay, well, you choose between the Dorian, Aeolian, or Phrygian. You choose between those. You see what I'm saying? So, like I said, I talk about that in another video. So I just figured I would actually share that with you all. I'll stick around for maybe a couple of minutes. If there are questions, drop a line and I can answer that question. Like right now, I'm in like question answering mode. So if you want to know, ask me. If you want to know, ask me. But yeah, I figured I would like talk about this in an informal way, and maybe I'll get back on the subject as well. Now, the details of this subject is in the community where I share charts and, you know, all other types of stuff that it adds more clarity to what I'm actually explaining. So this video will be actually a part of that. So yeah, right now, I don't see anybody saying anything. So for those of you who have joined this video, I really appreciate it. Thank you for, you know, hanging out with me or whatever. And I'll see you on the next one. All right. Thank y'all so much for hanging out. All right. Peace.